The NCAA season's finally entering conference play, and these 3 storylines will shape the road to the national championship. I think we're going to talk about it first. Obviously, the number 1 seed, Long Beach, still undefeated, and they have played some of the top teams.
Yeah, I think Long Beach has just looked, I don't know if I would say head and toe over everyone else, but they've been looking unstoppable so far. I think as a team as well, you can't even just put it on Moni Nikolov. I think libero play has been awesome. Obviously, the outsides have been really good. And the middle play has been really solid for them, too. I think they've just been a really tough team to play against.
Yeah, I think they just look like a top team, obviously elevated more by Moni being a little bit more of a creative setter, probably the most offensive setter. So it's giving a lot more or a lot tougher of a game plan for other teams to kind of match up with. So it's super interesting to see how this will progress for them. And the biggest question is, do we think that they will have a more perfect season? Will they remain undefeated?
Oh, man. If I was a betting man, I would definitely not put it on that. But, yeah. I mean, if there's a team to do it, honestly, I could see it being this team.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been a while since, like, we don't really get perfect seasons like this anymore.
No, definitely not.
It's super interesting to watch. Personally, I think that barring a second half of the season, like, downgrade, Moni Nikolov is pretty much having, like, a National Player of the Year season. And I don't think, like, obviously people say, like, oh, people glaze Moni Nikolov too much, but I don't think you can argue too much that, like, he's the most impactful player in NCAA right now.
Yeah. I feel that, how do I put this? I think people at this point have kind of overrated him to the point where now it feels like they're more so going to be haters on Nikolov. But I think the voters, I hope they get this right. But I think he has to be honest here. I would also give it to Moni Nikolov as, National Player of the Year at this point.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, especially for them so far, I don't think you can underrate the season that they've had and say, oh, pre-conference play, they've had weaker matchups because they've beaten good teams. They've beaten CSUN, they beat them 3-0. They played GCU, they beat them 3-0. They beat UCLA twice, 3-0, 3-1. They looked dominant. They beat Pepperdine, closer, a little bit, 3-2. That was early in the season. It's fine. And then they beat Lewis, number 14 seed, 3-1. So they're beating a lot of these top 20 teams, and they're beating them pretty dominantly for the most part. So obviously we have to see them play Hawaii, and we want to see them play UCI, but it's going to be tough to not pick Long Beach as the number 1 team.
For sure, yeah. I think that Long Beach is probably just going to be locked at number 1 for a while, unless they lose. I mean, again, I don't want to overrate them either. I think that they've had some close sets here and there, but they've been looking really solid.
Yeah.
Really solid. I think UCLA and Hawaii are probably the 2 teams that I would say could give them a run for their money. And again, we kind of talked about this last week, like, the AVCA poll sometimes is just crazy.
Yeah.
So they might not be number 1 ranked, but as long as they're undefeated, I think they'll still keep that up.
I think the matches pretty much to look out for, the matches that they could possibly lose, are pretty much down to UCI and Hawaii.
Yeah.
And honestly, obviously UCI has amazing players, but I think if there was a team to beat Long Beach right now, my money would be on Hawaii.
That's not bad. That's not bad. I don't hate that either, honestly. I think UCI will be a good game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if the matchup is going to work out very well.
Yeah. So it's super, super interesting. So watch out for Long Beach. Number 1 team, and it looks like they're going to stay that way.
Yeah.
The second team to look out for is Hawaii. I think that's our second storyline because, including myself, I think I've underrated them a lot. I think I've had them at that number 3, number 4 type range, obviously as one of the top true contenders. But watching them play, especially just beating UCI this past week, I think they look insanely good, and I think they are deserving of the number 2 and will be fighting for that number 1 whenever they eventually play Long Beach.
Yeah, I think that really will be that's going to be a super fun game to watch. Yeah. I think after Hawaii beat UCI, I think that really has cemented them as a true contender, and like really a team that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah,
for sure.
I honestly I think it's super interesting that this past ACVA poll, they were ranked 3 instead of 2. I think that the way that they beat UCI looked a little bit more impressive than UCLA beating UCI like previously, like a couple weeks ago. So I think that obviously they haven't played each other yet, so there's no reason to fully change the rankings, but I think that the way Hawaii looks right now, like I think they should be number 2, and I think they have the chance to get that number 1 when they play Long Beach.
Yeah. I think against UCLA will be a huge game for them. I think that will be one way for also just maybe the rest of the country and people to actually recognize Hawaii as a team that is really up there, because I feel like most people think that it's just UCLA or Long Beach at this point.
I think it might be something to do with the fan base for Hawaii being a little bit smaller, obviously being more the Hawaii locals being the true Hawaii supporters. Meanwhile, Long Beach obviously has Moni, so they got a lot more hype. UCI has Hilir Heno, a lot more hype because he's the National Player of the Year.
Yeah, you got
people want to watch him.
You got a whole country that's rooting for him too.
Yeah, and he was. I mean, Hawaii has their French players, but Hilir Heno was one of their national team roster like players. Obviously, not playing like that with the French team being their golden age team.
Yeah.
But he's there on the national team level, so he definitely has a lot more support going for him. And UCLA, one of the biggest colleges in the nation in sports in general, so obviously they'll have a big fan base.
Yeah, you're gonna get some bias there.
Yeah, and they're the reigning 2-time champions. So
yeah. I mean, you have to give it to them for that too.
But I think that has just kind of led to Hawaii being kind of lost in the mix when in reality they are a top tier contender.
Yeah, for sure. I think Hawaii is just looking real good, and we gotta put some respect on their name.
Yeah. Also, like Tread Rosenthal is like 6'10", 6'11", so we gotta lock in and remember that, because that's a big man.
He's really good too.
Yeah,
people don't get it wrong just because he's huge and he's super tall that he can get away with it, but he's a really good setter.
Yeah, I think in terms of being a top offensive setter, I think he's just second to Nikolov. Obviously, Nikolov being a lot more aggressive, but Tread Rosenthal has been pretty aggressive too, and I think just seeing him when he does his standing turn dump, being so tall, I'm like, oh, you can't see it coming.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean,
and he swings sometimes too.
Yeah, he's legit just dunking the ball too.
Yeah, it's like,
crazy.
that is something dangerous, and I think maybe that's kind of how the men's, especially the NCAA men's game is evolving. It's where when you have an aggressive setter like that, you're seeing with Long Beach especially, they're the most difficult team to game plan against. And I think that's what's keeping Long Beach on top. I think that's why Hawaii deserves number 2. I think it's just super hard to game plan versus a setter who can dump the ball on you, back row attack the ball on you at any time.
Yeah.
So I think Hawaii's the team to look out for. I think they're going to take the number 2 spot, and I think when they play Long Beach, that will be must watch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So let's move on to our next one. Our third storyline to follow, obviously one of the top teams, back-to-back championships, it's UCLA. So, I mean, people are coming into this season thinking this is UCLA's time for a three-peat. I mean, people had them coming into the season ranked 1, ranked 2 with Long Beach, obviously. And right now, I think they're slipping a little bit, which is something to also watch out for.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes, how it's going moving forward. But I think you still have to say you got to put some respect for UCLA that you can kind of expect them to rise when it comes to the tournament.
Yeah,
I think that they're going to come out there, they're not going to mess around, and they're going to start heating up towards the end of the season.
Honestly, I think that may have been part of the reason why they've had some losses or looked a little shakier in their matches. Is sometimes they look a little bit less locked in to say something like that. Especially a little bit on the outside. It's if they're not super locked in. The passing may slip up a little bit. They'll make a couple more errors than usual, and they won't be as fired up. But I think it just makes it harder for us to judge as viewers. Like, how will they truly match the competition when it comes to the tournament? Because we're not particularly seeing it in their most difficult matches, like here. Besides, obviously, they beat UCI, and UCI is its own story right now. I think they're just looking beatable by these top teams.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though, that when you talk about, are they actually serious right now?
Yeah.
But when you saw them lose to Long Beach, the next game when they played UCI, they were on top of things.
Yeah, someone was yelling at them. Maybe they saw social media. Their coach just dug into them.
Yeah.
But oh my God, they locked in.
And I think something that can put them over the top is their middle play. I think their middle play, if it's consistent and they get to run the middle and they run it aggressively, I think their middle play might be able to compete against a Long Beach or Hawaii just to keep it on edge. Because you have great outsides. Now it's just, are we still going to be able to keep them honest and still run the middle? Because their middles, when they run them well, they are hyper efficient, right? And they are really difficult to stop. Now it's, can UCLA take advantage of that?
Yeah, so UCLA is definitely a team to keep watching out for. I mean, we're going to see them probably have some more ups and downs this season, but their matches are going to be intense every single time, and it's time for us to really see, will they repeat? Will they get the three-peat? I mean, it'd be crazy if it happens.
Yeah, that'd be insane. I just think that every team right now is gunning for them, and now it's, can UCLA hold on, and can they step up to it?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the most important storylines to look out for, UCLA. And we can move on, just kind of talk about some of the other teams in NCAA, what kind of stories they have going for them. Obviously, we can start off UCI, pretty much the 4th seed right now. And after they've lost to UCLA, they've lost to Hawaii. It's tough to keep them up there with those top teams now because they lost.
Yeah, they've been slipping a little bit, and kind of what you were saying, they do look more beatable than these other 3 teams right now. And we'll have to see how that's going to go, because you don't want to rule out Hilaire Heno. I think,
of course,
he's for sure going to be one of those players that when you put him in a game where it truly matters and you got to win, he's going to try his damn best to try and get that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can also just chalk it up to a little bit of UCI still trying to figure out a little bit of things with their roster. I mean, they moved, what's his name? Flexen?
Yeah, Nolan Flexen.
They moved Nolan Flexen, I forgot his first name for a second. They moved Nolan Flexen to the outside just this past weekend, and it was an interesting move. I don't know if it exactly worked for them, but you can see that there's still some changes cooking for them. So maybe we can't write them off too early.
Yeah, I think they're still in the mix, but again, if we put them into tiers of contention, I think they might be that half step right below UCLA, Long Beach, and Hawaii at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they patch up the rest of the season when they've had these big losses, but maybe because they had these losses, they have a lot more to learn from. So
yeah,
could also be great for them. Now kind of just moving on to the rest of the teams, we kind of just have to see who's going to make the tournament. So it'll be an interesting fight. I think the top 4 is pretty much locked in. Yeah. And then everything from there is a little bit more mobile. So we're seeing a lot of movement in the lineups. CSUN there, McKendry just making an appearance. Loyola Chicago.
Hey, McKendry is looking like one of those teams that they could just randomly upset a team that is heavily favored.
Yeah.
And they're kind of they're the Honey Badgers. They're going to be so annoying to play against. You really got to put them away, or else you don't know what's going to happen. You might end up losing.
Yeah, so I think keeping our minds on that, it'll be super this is just the fight for the final seeding for the the national tournament at the end of the season is going to be super interesting to watch. I think it's going to keep changing week to week. So just that race is something to really keep your eye on.
Yeah, and I think it's good just to keep an eye on the Big Ten teams, the Midwest teams, and it's not just all about the West Coast teams because I think the West Coast teams obviously are being carried by those top four, but now you just want to see, and we have to keep our eyes open to what these other teams might be able to do. Now, I don't know if they're gonna be able to compete for the championship, but you never know. You never really know what's gonna happen in the tournament here.
Yeah, so. we're seeing so many teams that can move around. I mean, I'm not sure if any of these teams fighting for, I think it's the last 4 spots. I think the national championship is 8 teams. I think these last 4 spots, I'm not sure if any of them can beat the top 4 seeds, but they will be very good games as well.
Yeah, so. It'll be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, and these teams will be clawing for every single victory they have because in these bottom four national championship spots, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 5, 6, 7, 8 in the country, it'll be a tough fight.